I'm able to see through a lot of what has been presented. And I think that we've reached a level in our evolution now where we don't have to do all that elaborate stuff. And I hope to really show that and make that clear with the book that I'm working on. As a prerequisite, in the early chapters of the book, I've been writing about how what's required as far as safety or success, like what do you need in place beforehand. And if you look at the old books, it'll say that you need to have something done in a certain time of the moon. You got to do something with your clothes. You have to wear something bathed. You have to have these candles and this circle drawn on the carpet and this triangle and all this stuff. And for the most part, a lot of these things are arbitrary, or I should say they've become arbitrary, because in the beginning they all had very clear representations of what they're supposed to have as an effect on the unconscious mind, but that's been largely forgotten. Really, the only thing that you need as preparation is inner work, shadow work, the mind to have been stabilized. Because again, as long as you're operating from the perspective of a traumatized child, which most of us are babies in an adult body, right? I don't know if you've been outside and talked to people, but you'll notice most everybody is a hurt child. That's just the way it is. And if those traumas and those pains aren't neutralized and transcended, right? I didn't say buried under the carpet, and I didn't say projected onto someone else, because that's what we do. When we feel that trauma and that pain and that hurt that was never resolved, whether it was physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, whether it was any number of things, because a child is fragile and this world can be quite harsh. So everybody's got these traumas. If they're not neutralized and reabsorbed, what we actually do is we put them on other people. So now we hate groups of people, right? We hate a person because of their race. We hate them because of their sexual orientation. We hate them just for arbitrary reasons. Well, what's actually happening is that individual hates a part of themselves. And since they can't bring themselves to hate themselves or even to solve their problem, they project that onto someone or some group of entities, right? If you're not hating on somebody because of their race, you're not hating on somebody because of their sexual orientation, then you're hating some kind of faceless group, right? Oh, the government. What's the government? There's no government, right? You're still dealing with individual people, but we project it out there, or we bury it, right? And what we find when we bury it is that it takes other forms and it continues to attack us and traumatize us, right? So, for example, a lot of women who suffered abuse, they seek partners who are abusive, and the cycle continues. Now, that's not because they like being beat up. It's because that's how they haven't dealt with that trauma, so it keeps manifesting in different forms. So imagine if a person takes all of that unhealed trauma and tries to work with demonic spirits, right? What's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to try to hurt people who hurt them. They're going to try to use their projected images, their projected hatred, their projected prejudices, and this is where the whole backlash and the whole harm comes from working with energies like this, because you're working with energies that are very potent because they exist at a rate that is closer to the unmanifest. So when you're dealing with these potent energies, they're going to manifest in some way, shape, or form that's going to relate to your unhealed trauma. So all this to say, before I release my book, I put together a training on shadow work. And I think that this is really important. I think that if you want to have success, not just working with spirits, but also in understanding this spiritual information, you've got to have a certain level of a neutralized inner child. Now, when I say neutralized, I mean harmonized. I mean that the inner child is not operating from a place of, I've been hurt, so now I want to hurt somebody. If that's at the core of your operating system, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you work with Kabbalah, Goetia, Reiki, right? It doesn't matter what you're working with. If that inner child is wounded and neglected from its healing, it's going to express that pain out. Just like in the movie Doctor Strange, what Wanda was doing with that book. That's a perfect example of what's happening if you don't do your shadow work. Let alone talking about, oh, I'm working with the dark side, I'm working with the clip off. You ain't done a lick of shadow work, but you talking about working with the clip off. which is probably why you're attracted to the clip off, because you think that there's some strange dark power that you can use to get back at the people that hurt you, right? Which in itself, you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's not ever that these demons attack you. It's because your inner structure is faulty. I know it's hard to look in the mirror, but it's not that these demons or these spirits or anything is out to get you. It's because your inner structure is so inefficient that when you bring that power in, that inefficient structure starts to collapse on itself. So if you're somebody who feels like you're under psychic attack, and somebody told you that and you believe it, if you're somebody who feels like your inner trauma is getting in the way of you understanding this information, if you're someone who feels like you've been trying to do shadow work forever but you don't know where to start, then I highly suggest you check out the training that I'm offering on shadow work. I think it'll save you a lot of trouble and a lot of suffering moving forward. And it'll probably demonstrate to you that you already know enough. You're just blocked from seeing it due to this trauma. So all that to say, shadow work is extremely important. And please make that at the forefront of your practice. And if you're not going to take my training on it, do your own research on it. A good book that I have on the subject, if you don't plan on taking my class on shadow work, 2 good books that can help you out. One of them is called The 7-Day Mental Diet. It's written by Emmett Fox. It's a very short book. It'll help you start the process of coming into here and now and not living in the past. It's very short. It's a little pamphlet even. It's called The 7-Day Mental Diet. Also, if you want to get a little bit deeper, check out Meeting the Shadow. Now, Dr. Connie Zeig, she actually has 3 books in this series. Okay? And what happens is that they explore how the shadow expresses itself. And what's really cool about this particular series is that she gets input from several prominent psychologists. So you'll have plenty to read about if you're the type that wants to read. But otherwise, I suggest you take my class. Of course, I'm going to say that because I'm one of the best teachers in the world. But seriously, if your inner child is unhealed and you haven't neutralized a lot of these subtle influences, it's going to make itself evident in everything that you do. Understand it. Not just Kabbalah, not just any of that. Shadow work is crucial. And like I said before, moving forward with the real power, I really want to address that and make sure that everybody just knows how crucial it is. You're not going to have success unless you meet your shadow and neutralize it. Now, it might not happen today, but at some point, you have to do shadow work. Do you understand me? At some point, you have to. It's not an option. I prefer you do it while you still have a body, because it's going to be very difficult when you don't have a body. Because again, we're talking about karma now, right? And reincarnation. Because if you're operating from a place of pain and an unhealed inner child, by default, you're generating all kinds of karma. By default. Because you're clinging and holding on to something. And you're letting that trauma define you. So imagine if you lose this body and you're still clinging on to that trauma, you're only going to attract another living experience to work that karma out. Deal with it now.